Welcome back to another episode of Discuss With Us. Brian, welcome to our phone setup.
This is going to be interesting.
Yeah, so we're back to our topics. We're going to do a topic today. It's not just Darcy here, obviously.
Yeah, I'm back.
Yeah, Brian's here. I'm glad to have you back. It's a little less pressure for me.
I'm just here for comic relief.
Yes. But no, we were planning to go back to our whole setup in the shop, but several things happened.
It's too cold outside.
It's cold, and so like we worked into the evening a little bit trying to get things prepped. But then also, our boys got sleeping bags for their final Christmas today, and they decided, which I knew this was a bad idea.
Yeah. You know it, but you still
Yeah, you have to, I guess.
indulge.
Yeah. So they got home and they're like, can we sleep in our sleeping bags? And, we said yes. Yeah, y'all can try it. And, it's just back and forth until they finally ended up in their beds. But
Hopefully right now.
I know. Well, but so we also just didn't want to leave,
Yeah.
go to the shop in case they do
Come looking for us.
Yeah, exactly. So, anyways, but yeah, so we're back to our topics today. We made it through the holidays.
Relatively unscathed.
Yeah. And today we are talking about the Feast of the Epiphany,
Yes.
which I knew nothing about growing up.
I only knew a little about it. It's just a day.
Went with it. So,
but it's a cool day.
yes, no, it is cool, and I've appreciated it. It's like each year, this is kind of one of the cool things about being a convert to Catholicism is like there's just layers to the onion that get peeled back. And you would, if you were a convert to, I don't know, being Baptist, it would be the same way. Like you're peeling back layers.
It's one of the advantages of marrying a convert is you have to.
Because you actually learn these things.
Yeah.
You discover that there are layers. But there's been different like feast days that I've immediately appreciated. Like I guess, is it a feast of the Holy Family? Is that what you like feast of, or is it like the...
I think so. I think
whatever
that's
the
what they
celebration,
do on New Year's Day.
Yeah, whatever the celebration of the Holy Family, I've always been drawn to that one. Immediately liked it, but Feast of the Epiphany is somewhat a new one for me to actually, I don't know, read more about. So I figured it would be a good topic for today.
Yeah, spoiler that we'll get into. This is essentially the Magi reaching Bethlehem.
Right. Well, that's what I was going to say. So let's like define it in terms of the Catholic Church, which you kind of just did.
No,
It's
whoops.
already messing up. I'm just kidding. So we say the Feast of the Epiphany, and basically in the Catholic Church, anything that you're celebrating gets a feast, which I can get on board with.
We like to eat.
Yeah. But it is cool because there's also usually some kind of food item or something that like goes with the feast to kind of give you like a theme, which I actually don't know if there's anything for the Epiphany.
Yeah, and we're technically recording this on the 5th. The Epiphany is the 6th of January every year.
Yes.
So it's actually, I guess y'all listening to this will be the Epiphany, but it's
what
today
it
if y'all are
is-
listening to it on the 6th.
Okay, so what it is the Epiphany is the, well, you read it then if you want to read. But the Epiphany is when they celebrate, it's like the commemoration of when the three magi.
We don't know if there was 3.
Oh, Lord, we're going to get into that. I guess we assume there's 3 because there's 3 gifts.
Yeah.
Okay, well...
It's unknown how many magi there were.
Yeah, Brian, I'm glad you're here to keep me technically in check. But it's the commemoration of when the Magi met Jesus, right? Like when they...
Yes.
Yeah. And so we'll kind of go into that, but this is the Feast of the Epiphany is just the celebration of that commemoration, if you will. And so define epiphany, like the actual word. I thought you had it pulled up. Sorry.
I do, but it's not super clear. So it can be an appearance or manifestation, especially of a divine being, or the other one would be a usually sudden manifestation or perception of the essential nature or meaning of something.
Yeah, I feel like I've said before, like, oh,
I feel like it's one of those words where
epiphany
people say they have an epiphany, and it's like, well, what's an epiphany? And it's hard to actually explain.
Yeah, just like a sudden realization is what I would call it. And usually
or
probably
like a
prompted
eureka
by,
moment is
exactly.
When clarity comes.
It sounds like those words come from the same root word, probably.
Yeah, I think so.
Okay, so we had a good homily today in church.
For what we could listen to, which was most of it. The boys were pretty good.
It was funny because I feel like priests hardly ever use like, okay, you know, because you see this all the time in other churches outside of the Catholic Church. They'll use some kind of acronym or like, you know, way of remembering what it was. And so today,
that does not happen. I know
it doesn't happen
church,
in the Catholic Church
today.
But today, Father, is it Father Edwin?
Yes,
he's newer, so I should know his name by now. But anyway, he said, you know, I wanted to talk about the Feast of the Epiphany today, and I've got an acronym to help you. And me and Brian like whipped around and looked at each other like, oh.
No prep needed for this evening. Just remember this.
So, but it was a good one. So the Magi, I don't know, I'm going to just like basically fact vomit here. And I can't even really say fact. It's more like facts mixed with some assumptions that people make. But
yes,
they are called the Magi, which we don't even really know what that word means. It comes from like maybe even magician, but it's thought that they were like astronomers.
Yeah. So I guess we're going with the misconceptions. Is that where we're?
Oh, well, I mean,
that's fine.
No, but what I was going to say is what prompted them to go seek out Jesus is that they saw the star.
Yes.
So that's what I was getting at.
Oh.
Star is the acronym.
Yes.
I should have started with that. So Father Edwin he said STAR is your acronym, and he walked through all the different things. And what it was is, number one, that they were seekers, and that they traveled, that they adored, and then they returned, which the last one you're like, okay, yeah, they returned. But if you read in the Bible, how they returned is especially significant in that they didn't go back as King Herod had requested of them to tell him where the baby was.
Yeah.
So seekers traveled.
Toddler, we don't know.
Yeah, toddler. Seekers traveled, adored, and returned. And one of the points that was made, and I guess the biggest word out of the acronym that stuck out to me was that they were seekers. Because Father Edwin made the point that, you know, a lot of people saw the star.
Yeah.
And studied it even and admired it, but the Magi acted on it.
Well, let's pause on this and then hit it, because I do think that's all the good stuff, but let's get the misconceptions out of the way.
So
first.
in a nativity, you always see in a nativity scene, you always see the three kings, and that's not necessarily how it happened. Sing
the song, "We Three Kings."
Yes,
they could have been. We don't know.
Well, it doesn't. The Bible doesn't really. Scripture doesn't really support that they made it. They didn't go to the inn where he was born.
Oh, no. Yeah,
Yeah.
they definitely weren't at the nativity.
No.
I was talking about the king part.
Oh, okay. But so yeah, you picture, because of the nativity and how it's set up, and you always see the three kings. But no, the shepherds made it to the inn and saw Jesus.
Yeah.
But the magi, the wise men, the three kings, whatever you want to call them, they came later because they had further to travel.
Yeah, this also makes more sense because it's always been kind of funny to think of Mary, Joseph, and baby Jesus in a stable getting given
All these visitors.
No. Well, yeah, all the visitors, but that's just like a hospital room. But
Yeah, I guess so.
more so, you're sitting in a stable because you couldn't get a bed anywhere, and you're being given gold, frankincense,
gold,
and myrrh. Like, well, here you go.
Yeah.
I don't know where we'll put this, but
Right.
But yes, the most common, nobody knows exactly when they got there, so it's all just a guess. But
which also, this goes back to one of the facts about how or when the Feast of the Epiphany is celebrated. So the Christmas season in the Catholic Church is celebrated as 12 days, and so it always falls on January 6th. That doesn't necessarily mean that it only took 12 days for the Magi to make it to Jesus. In fact, I think most
people think it was a couple years.
It was, yeah, because they had to travel hundreds of miles.
Oh, we think. All it says is they came from the east. So a lot of people think it could have been from Persia, but it could have been farther. We don't really know.
Yeah. But I think most people who have studied it any length of time think that it was at least several months to possibly 2 years.
Yeah, I don't know where some people, like there's a lot of people who are fairly certain that Jesus would have been a toddler.
Yeah.
I don't really know why, because I've never seen that in the Bible. Obviously, it doesn't say anything about that.
Yeah, you really have to dig into the text and the references that they make, and probably make some leaps. But
anyways, back to the term magi. So that's the other one where magi could be any number of titles, really. Like Darcy said, it could be they were magicians. Clearly, they had some, whether it was religious
Financial
beliefs
success.
or stuff. Well, yeah, but belief in the stars, astronomy had to have been clear, which would have been for a lot of studied people back then. So we're not sure how wealthy they were, whether they were kings. There were a lot of kings back in that time period. The one thing I will say that's always struck me is whether magician or king-esque, they gained an audience with Herod on their way through.
That's true.
So that tells me they must have had some form of
Some
status.
kind of clout.
Yeah. Even if it was like traveling people, they must have been out of the ordinary from how Herod acted. Because I mean, they weren't Romans, I don't think. They came from the east. So it's probably someone of higher stature would be a good assumption, but we don't really know. We don't know how far they came from or anything like that. But yeah, they weren't there on the birth of Jesus either.
Yeah. I made a comment earlier because...
and we don't know if there was three. It's just three gifts. But for sake of the argument, we'll say three, but we don't really know that.
Yeah.
And if you see anyone that says they know their names, I think all that's made up too.
Yeah, so back to Father Edwin. He has had some of the most elaborate vestments that I've seen.
I know, me too, and I've been a Catholic my whole life. So
and the vestment is it just the one piece that goes down, or is it considered their whole
oh Lord,
get up?
I think the whole thing's considered the vestment, but because the back piece changes.
I'm talking about what
they wear on
the
the
priest
front.
wears as he's celebrating Mass.
Like
and there's for lack of a better term, a very long bib
Or like
in
a
the
scarf almost, but thicker.
I think
don't
bib's
know.
better.
Yeah.
but like a very long.
Even if
bib.
you've seen a priest on a movie, you'll know what
Yeah, exactly.
what they wear.
And they can be very ornate, and but up until recently, I haven't noticed, anyways, a lot of, or many of them that have like pictures. It's more like a design.
Yeah.
But recently, and not just Father Edwin, I noticed that somebody else had one the other day that had like a really cool scene on it. But anyways, Father Edwin had a great vestment on today that was pretty elaborate. And when I looked at it, I was showing the boys the vestment after church, and he was showing it to them. And on the vestment, it shows the three kings greeting. Or no, this was in June's little beginner's Bible, actually.
Oh.
Now that I'm thinking about it. I guess it was similar to the vestment as well. But June has a little beginner's Bible that's actually really neat. And he happened to flip to the page today where the Magi met Jesus, and it showed Jesus in toddler form. Like he was standing there in front of them.
Yeah.
I thought that was pretty cool.
See, I told you, toddler form.
Yeah. So, anyways, back to the homily, though.
Yes, now we can go back to that.
Okay. So, yeah,
So we're on S.
My favorite part of the acronym, the thing that kind of stuck with me was, I guess, both that they were seekers and that they traveled. So it's like, he made the point.
Yeah,
plenty of people saw the star,
and
admired it, studied it, thought it was cool, but they sought and traveled hundreds of miles. We don't know exactly how far, but far. And then adored and returned was the other ones. But I really liked the seekers and the traveling, the acting upon what you're feeling. And then one thing that also occurred to me, and I think one of the reasons that they knew to seek this star out, and not even just the star, like they knew they were going after the King of the Jews. That's what they called him, which is
I don't
wild.
know how they would have known that, honestly.
Well, because they were...
I guess they were studied.
They were very studied men, and I don't know if it's in Isaiah or where it is. I feel like Isaiah has a lot of prophecy. But in the Old Testament, they talk about, the King of the Jews. So
yeah, it's just they wouldn't have been Jewish, so it's like...
That's true. But I guess the point that I'm getting at is that they knew the direction and the direction to head, and that they needed to get there, and they took haste because they had studied the Bible. Well, not even the Bible back then, but like they...
Yeah, well, like the point to go figure, things from thousands of years ago are still relevant today. Mm-hmm. So the point Father Edwin was making, which I think is a good one, is they saw the star, studied it, and seeked and traveled. Mm-hmm. And that's supposed to be relevant to us today of, are you, when God presents himself to you, do you seek him out? And are you willing to travel, and maybe not literally, but figuratively travel to him and let nothing else get in your way?
Yeah.
And just be drawn. We're supposed to be drawn to God. And so here's these people from, all it says is Far East. Mm-hmm. Or I guess it doesn't even say Far East. It just says east of Bethlehem. But that made this journey. And I guess we will assume for them to I guess maybe they saw the star, and maybe that could have led them to the Jewish tradition to see what it was. But it is highly likely it's not something they were even raised with. So for probably most of us listening, we grew up Christian, know all these things, but how crazy and strong is it that this wouldn't have been something I mean, Jesus had never been on the earth. So
Yeah.
it's just, you're almost going on a whim, so to speak, a hope and a prayer. And yet they still decided, like, yeah, let's pack up and see what this is all about.
Yeah, a lot of things.
And brought those gifts with them. It's
right.
not like they came unprepared. That's the
Right.
other thing. They sought out, prepared for what they were hoping to find.
Yeah. Yeah, a lot of things can sound like a good idea when you're hanging out with your buddies,
Yeah.
At night. And then the next morning you're like, yeah, well, no, let's just go back into our normal day-to-day.
Yeah.
And they did not. I guess my point was they were... I think the advantage that they had was that they were educated. And I'm not just even talking in like a...
They were smart.
Yeah.
Not even saying that, yeah.
But just that I think whatever background they had helped them to recognize this. So the point that I'm getting to is...
well, and that's why we call this the Epiphany. It's like they would have had the Epiphany.
Yes. So you can look at this from both angles, I think. Experiencing an epiphany. I just made Brian cringe really hard trying to get that word out.
Is it skipping?
Experiencing an epiphany, by definition, or by most definitions, requires like a divine being. So there's a lot of that is just flat out of our control. But what is in our control is... I don't know, like the efforts that we put towards it is what I'm getting at. And so one of my thoughts about this when I was just kind of reflecting on like the term epiphany and, the thing that stuck out to me is when Father was giving the facts about like the date range that, when they would have traveled and all this stuff. And it just hit home for me because, and I was telling you this afterwards, sometimes I feel like when we hear Bible stories over and over and over and over again, they get like romanticized to us. They get like almost like second nature, like, yeah, that's a story. That's it. And you see, even like I was thinking about, because I love watching The Star at Christmas time. And that has the story of the Magi in it and everything. And you just can start to look at those stories through a Disney lens, if you will.
Yeah.
And not that that's bad either. I think it has its advantages toward teaching our kids. But my point was, I had to like check myself this morning and be like, yeah, that actually happened. 3 men studied a star and then were like, we're going there because there's something real important happening there. That's wild.
It also kind of like, we see like you said, the movie, The Star and everything. And can you imagine what that star must have looked like?
Oh, no, I thought about that too.
This almost speaks more to that too. This wasn't just the North Star in the sky. It wasn't just the Big Dipper like this sucker must have been given off some kind of powerful glow for, like I said, we assume these people came from afar. And not that they just would have seen it, but that they would have seen it to the point that it's like, something's going on here. And probably,
we need to go and we need to bring gifts.
I don't think well, like I said, in my head, and I could be wrong here, but I don't think they were Jewish. Therefore, they probably would have started scouring information to find out, like, what is this? And maybe came across the Old Testament readings, because Isaiah or wherever it is. I don't remember what that is, but it is
may not
prophesized.
Be Isaiah, but
you got that stuck in my head now. But
it's just where a lot of prophecy
not only
lies.
to whatever would have drawn them, that they just took off towards this thing.
Yeah. No, and so I was just thinking about, like, when was the last time that I felt like I had an epiphany of my faith?
Yeah.
And and I don't know. I mean, I feel like I have little small epiphanies relatively often, but just thinking about that, okay, just bear with me and go down this line, okay? I was thinking about like how to discuss this with you guys and what kind of takeaway you can take from it. Like, how can I have more epiphanies? Like, how can I have more or feel God's presence in a way that moves me or makes me, change myself, let go of something, head a different direction, all those things. And I think that there's probably like two schools of faith, if you will, schools of thought on where you might be in your faith journey. And one might be that you've got your nose in the Bible, studying everything, but maybe you're lacking in the actual, like, feeling God's presence aspect. And then maybe there's somebody who feels like very prayerfully connected to God, but hasn't done much studying of the Bible, or just like, I don't know, changing their everyday life around it. I don't know. Just, again, bear with me.
We are.
And so I was thinking that it's kind of like when Daddy and I, this past week, we got him a new golf club. We got him a driver for Christmas. And so we went to the driving range, and we were hitting balls, and he was, of course, watching my swing and kind of coaching me. And we would go back and forth from picking at every little thing that I was doing and trying to fix it, to then just being like, just hit it, just like, let's see your natural swing. And then we would dive back into it, and we'd go back and forth. And that kind of, to me, is like the two schools of thought on your faith journey.
Look at you.
Are you following me?
Tying in sports on top of it? Yeah.
I'm worried that nobody's following me. Sometimes you don't know if these connections are only made in your head. But that was kind of my thought, was like, if you are walking the walk and you're doing all the routine and all the things, maybe you need to just sit and like listen for God. Make time in your life to make that what you're doing right now, to try to feel God's presence and what he would have you do and where he would have take you. And then, if you're in the other school where maybe you are, feeling God's presence, likely if you're there, you probably are diving into the Bible. But if not, like, dive into the Bible, get involved in your church, let
God use you then.
Yeah, let God use you then. So, because I think when we push our comfort zone, that's where we can open ourselves up to God a little more. Does any of that make sense?
I'm going to have to go back and listen, but maybe.
So if you're overanalyzing your swing, just swing it. and if you're just swinging, maybe watch a few YouTube videos, okay?
I love it when we have golf and the Bible. That's the best.
You didn't expect me to bring that in,
Is this a new thing? Are we tying sports into this? Because it's
our new premise.
Yeah.
Okay. Sort that out. You got any other thoughts on that?
So we hit the ST pretty hard. Obviously they prostrated themselves and adored God when they got there. That's all pretty well documented.
Yeah, I was sorry to stop you right off the bat. I'll let you.
She's used to doing these things by herself. She said, I can't wait till you come back, and then here we are.
Then I don't let him talk. But you just said that, like, because it says that in the Bible, they prostrated themselves in front of Jesus. And I never pictured that like I pictured it this morning, because I pictured it because of June's little Bible there. I was like, they prostrated themselves in front of a toddler and said, "You are the King of the Jews."
Well, the other thing here, though, is I'm sure a lot, depending on the age here, well, going all the way back to Mary got pregnant without, by the Holy Spirit. Like,
yes.
weird things had obviously been happening to them.
Yeah.
But I think it's almost like, and you can think about this biblically, even in our own lives. Like, okay, I believe in God, I believe in miracles, and yet you see a miracle and you're still like, holy smokes.
Yeah.
Well, I gotta think they're on the front end of all these things happening. And even though we get numb to it and forgetful of it. You notice this even with the apostles with Jesus throughout his
Yes.
journey. And so I always think about how it must have been at home, especially in those early years, especially since we currently have young children.
Yeah.
That even though all these things had been happening, imagine if this happened like a couple years later. Like you've gone through the birth and everything, and then these magi just show up and start worshiping your kid
that you probably just had to,
change a diaper or something, like
or say eat your supper.
So that's kind of where this part gets me, is if it had been, because the reason I say this is I don't remember if it was this week or last week where he's at the temple, when Jesus gets lost.
Oh, yeah, that was the reading.
And
that was later on in his life.
No, I know. But my point with saying this is later on in his life, Mary and them were still confused.
Oh, yeah.
So the point of that is, that's what I mean. Like you were impregnated by the Holy Spirit, had all these things happening throughout the birth, but clearly you'd still get numb and forgetful to it.
Well, I think you just kind of like revert to
raising a kid at that point.
Yes,
the same way like
humanness.
we knuckle down and we're just raising kids, right? It was the same thing for them, except there's no magi showing up at our house, I don't think.
No, I don't think so.
I mean, they can bring the gold. I'd be fine with that. I don't really know what to do with the other two, but
I like the smell of frankincense.
My point was, if you imagine having like a 2 or 3 year old and then these guys showing up, and that would it would reaffirm everything for you, but B, just how like shocking it must have been for them. But then my favorite part that Father Edwin said on return, like you almost think like, oh, that was real hard to find one for the R, but what he said was, it's not just that they returned a different way because of Herod. His point was having met Jesus and having your epiphany moment to what you would say Christianity. It's impossible to walk the same way back. You have to go a different way because you're on a different path now.
Yeah.
You can't meet Jesus and stay on the same heading you were prior.
Yes.
And that's kind of to your point on being on this faith journey for both of your metaphors there. Once you have one of the epiphanies, and you know what? I always feel like when Protestants talk about baptism and the or not, I guess it's not baptism, but
rebirth.
Yes, when you've accepted Jesus Christ, and the saying there is you were born again, not the same, right? So I feel like that kind of plays out here, where it's like you can't, it's impossible to do things in the same way now.
Yes.
And forever forward. So, but his point was, yes, they obviously went a different way because of Herod, but that's also symbolic because they couldn't go the same way because now they've encountered Jesus.
No, I forgot he said that, so I'm glad that you brought that up.
See, I was
good
listening.
Point. Look how valuable you've been.
Y'all were going to miss all that good stuff if this was still done in our closet. So we got through family Christmas. I've got some honeydews done, so maybe I can join again.
Yeah. Okay, so any final thoughts?
I thought I just gave some good thoughts.
Yeah, no, that was good. Okay, so you're forever changed. You return a different person, a different way. And I guess my point in summary would be whatever you've been doing it, however you've been pursuing your own faith journey, make a point to stop and like seek an epiphany.
And maybe
encounter with
and think
God.
about your own events of your life. I don't think you just have to have one epiphany. I don't really know how that would play out. But that's, if you're not Catholic, this is, I think, part of why we celebrate this and make such a big deal about this, is to kind of not gloss over these things that should be, like I said, everyone thinks like, oh man, yeah, I believe in God, and then they see a miracle and they're like, oh man, I can't believe that could happen. So it's like, yes, I'm sure with some thinking, all of us have had probably multiple epiphanies,
right.
But this is supposed to be a time to remember that and reflect on it, and hopefully clear your mind to be open for more.
Yeah. And remind yourself that it's not a Disney story.
Exactly.
It happened.
And if you are Catholic and like me, needing the convert wife to kind of draw some of these back home for you, then just remember what this is bringing Christmas to a close. You get through Christmas and then you still have this. I think that's also the cool part of it, is like, Christmas is just the beginning of it.
Yes.
It's the beginning. Truly, it's the beginning of the Christmas season. It's actually why this weekend is actually when you start taking your Christmas decorations down. Yeah. Christmas was just the beginning. And now you get to the Epiphany, and just kind of bring in that and kind of focus on that. And
yeah, and you can take your Christmas stuff down tomorrow.
No, it's too cold for that now.
Yeah, no kidding.
They got to stay up.
Ours is going to stay up until the kids go back to school. I can tell you that much, because I'm not taking this down without them being gone. Okay, well, winter weather is coming this week, tonight.
In Texas. Well, everywhere, I think.
Yeah. So hope you guys have prepared. I hope you all stay warm.
Us down here, I think we are just a little sensitive to this, because a couple years ago, it's just getting cold.
It's just getting cold, and it isn't even going to stay below freezing all day. But we
wrap
all
your
have
pipes anyways.
Yeah, but we all have PTSD from a few years ago. Yeah. Well, even was last year or the year before, where we had another several days of...
Year before, I think.
Yeah.
Last year was relatively mild, I think.
I don't know, I lose track. But anyways, gotta... I know we're not in our quote-unquote studio.
I don't have my headphones. I don't have my microphone. I'm just staring at your phone.
Yeah.
What did I used to say? Now that we have unpacked the Epiphany, you go discuss.